for your patience, everybody. So George, maybe in interest of time, we will get started. And then if those posts get on, we can then forward to everybody else and they can join.
Yeah, go for it, please.
So first of all, a little welcome to everybody that hasn't been to a Peculiar Appetizers and Allies and Appetizers, rather. We're really excited to have, I think, two rockstar guest speakers. I'm a little biased because I happen to think they're both amazing. And so when we were talking about our monthly theme, of which July is a part of what we have is regular lesson plans for study and kind of development of skills or insights or just further understanding into what it means to be an LGBTQ affiliated and allied family and parents and siblings. And so July is our theme is how can siblings be allies? And I thought of instantly when we were thinking about this, and George and a couple of us were kind of theorizing who would be a great guest speaker. And of course, there's it's kind of the dynamic duo. I met Jacob and then Ben almost probably 4.5 years ago for Jacob. And then after that met Ben and wanted them to share their stories. And I'll sort of moderate as we go. But if there's anything that anyone wants to hear or clarification or further details or another question,
recording in progress.
We'd be happy to stop the conversation. If you just do the raise your hand feature on the Zoom, then we'll know that that's what's going on. And we'll go from there. So Jacob, if you'll start and kind of tell your story, your journey about getting to be the Dunford that is now, and tell us a little bit about yourself and give us your Marvel Comics origin story, I suppose.
Okay, rad. Thanks, Paul. I'm really, really grateful that you and George invited Ben and I to be a part of this. I told Ben before, though, I get to talk all the time about myself and Encircle, but I never get to hear from Ben. So I'm going to try to shut up as much as I can and give Ben the mic. But Ben's like, okay, I want to say something. I came off mute. No.
No.
I'll give you kind of just a high level. I'm really grateful that a lot of folks from my family are here to, tune in. And maybe George will have other folks kind of pop in as we go. So a little bit about me. Professionally, I'm Chief Operating Officer of Encircle. He, him pronouns. I've been with Encircle since inception. And if you don't know what Encircle is, I think the best way to talk about it is it's a safe space for LGBTQ young people and their families to come, get a chocolate chip cookie, maybe go to therapy, maybe find friends, maybe find community, if we're lucky, And when we opened our house in Provo in 2017, I was a little skeptical if anyone was going to show up at the grand opening. I had some doubts. I want to talk about why I had those doubts. When I came out of the closet, I had an experience where I felt outside of my community, and I felt that at the night before the grand opening, I remember texting with Stephanie and I said, is anyone going to come? I knew that the LGBTQ folks were going to be there, but I meant the rest of the community. Would they be there? Would they show up? And sure enough, that morning, we had about 800 folks from the community show up, and it had families and strollers and bishops and stake presidents and temple presidents and atheists. We had everything, you know what I mean? And I really was so touched by that. Outside of Encircle, I want to talk specifically about my personal coming out, because that's where Ben and I share a lot of common ground. When I think I probably realized I was LGBTQ around the age of 12. And what was the feeling? Probably the underwear aisle at JCPenney's. Like that was like, oh my God, like I think that I might be feeling something. I remember that being like a both funny memory now, but at the time it was kind of traumatic, and on average, LGBTQ kids realize that they are different around age 12, and they don't on average come out of the closet until age 22. And I think that I probably wouldn't have come out of the closet until I was 26, 27, 28. I mean, I was petrified. If it wasn't for my parents asking me if I was LGBTQ. And I think that that kind of started me on a journey of self-acceptance. And really the hallmark experience for me in all of this, and I've shared this story before, but not with a lot of the folks here, is when I was really feeling quite down, struggling with, depression, isolation, and loneliness. My parents decided to take me to my favorite barbecue restaurant. It's called Lucille's. And I don't know if you've been to Lucille's, it's pretty good. So it's worth a visit. And we're sitting in the booth. So it's my mom, my dad who are here, and me right here. And I'm eating my sandwich. This sandwich is like next level good. It's so good. And I thought, sure enough, this sandwich can cure my depression. I had that feeling because it was that good. And it really kind of ended where halfway through the dinner, I started crying to my parents. And, I remember my dad saying to me, son, what is it? Why are you, we want you to go and thrive and live your life. So what is it? Tell us, try to communicate to us in words what you're feeling. And I think for a lot of LGBTQ folks, but especially myself at that time, I was feeling happy and sad all at the same time, both apart and lonely, angry and grieving. It was like so many things, and it really kind of boiled down to, I felt like I wanted what they had. I wanted a million kids, primary songs. I wanted all of my children to become ward organists. And if they weren't ward organists, then I don't know, I didn't want them. I wanted some of the feelings of community and culture. And I felt like I couldn't have it. And I felt outside of my community. And I also felt like I was the only person on the earth going through this. I felt very alone. And what was interesting is that what my parents said to me changed my life forever. My dad said, if you aren't in heaven, it's not heaven to us. And I remember my mom saying, if LGBTQ people aren't in heaven, we're not going. And what that kind of did for me was it brought together everything into one, where you really feel the support of the people you care most about in the world being in your corner. And what I remember most about it now, looking back, is that every child deserves a champion. Somebody who roots for their successes and stands with them no matter what. And I think most kids, and especially myself, crave that, and you want to feel accepted and valued just the way you are. And there's an experience I want to share about Ben. Ben here, this is sibling month, is the quiet spokesperson for the voiceless. Okay, Ben, you gotta talk.
Jacob, thank you for, we can give you a minute if you need it. Ben, maybe you could tell a little bit about what kind of family dynamic in terms of faith, and just to bring the room or the crew attending sort of what it was that your core values were as a family.
Yeah, I can talk to that. I'll start with the story of when I found out that Jacob was gay. So I was probably 16 or so. My mom took me out to lunch. Jacob was actually on a mission at the time. So he had already come out, he'd gone on a mission. And that came with a whole host of difficulties and trials itself. But I was sitting at at lunch with my mom, and you could just kind of tell there was something that she was trying to get out, and we're kind of going back and forth. And eventually she tells me, pretty just blunt. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but it was basically just like, your brother Jacob is gay. And my initial, like my first reaction was like, okay. And I was like, I don't really, I didn't really see, I was like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. And then the story gets interesting when I go home, and after lunch, I went into my room, I closed the door, and I bawled my eyes out. I'm going to try not to get too emotional, but it's just because I knew what that meant. I knew what that meant for Jacob and for our family, given our circumstances and our dynamic with our religion. And I wasn't upset at Jacob. I was sad for him.
What did it mean, Ben? Why were you sad?
I was sad for him because I knew that that it was going to be a very hard journey for him, and that I knew what I had been raised my whole life to believe. And it's interesting because after I had that I had an emotional couple days there where I cried a few times, and I was sad for him, right? And I was sad for what that was going to mean for our family, because that can be a hard thing to be okay with. You don't want that as a family. You don't want to have to deal with that. But I knew that it was something that it's like I knew it was true all along. And I can kind of talk to that too. I remember Jacob and I went to the same high school. I was a freshman and he was a junior or senior or something like that. We were a few years apart. And randomly one day, some of Jacob's age friends came and found me, and they asked me, like, is your brother gay? And I was like, what? No. Like, why would you even think that? I was so shocked. Like, I'd never even crossed my mind. Nobody ever asked me. I never even thought it. It just felt so out of left field. But it was because I had known Jacob at that point for 15, 16 years, and they had just met him. And for me, Jacob has just always been Jacob, and he's just always been the way that he is, and that's just normal Jacob. I think people often get confused that somebody just they're when they come out as gay, they're a different person. They've changed. Something's all new and different. But I just nothing ever changed for me. So I just knew when they asked that, I was very confused. I was like, no, that's crazy. I don't know why you'd even think that. But then in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, it's because it was obvious to them, right? But to me it wasn't. Just because nothing had ever changed. It was just who he was. To speak to your question on the family dynamic, kind of after Jacob coming out and me finding out about it, which was, I don't remember exactly how long later. And I think I was a little bit confused at first when you asked me and Jacob to come on and to talk about siblings being good allies, because I don't like, I almost don't picture myself as being a good ally. I'm just a good brother, you know, like, and of course I'm a good ally to the community, and I do my best, but for me, it was never like a decision. I never had to make a decision that like, okay, you know what, I'm going to say no and shut out all these things that I've been taught, and I'm just going to, and I'm going to accept Jake for who he is. It was just, it never even crossed my mind to like have a conflict about it. So that's why I was like, are you sure you want me to come talk on this? Because, you know, I don't really have, I didn't have that conflict. You know, it wasn't a problem for me. And I think part of that was because of the dynamic of my family and how I was raised. It was, for us, it was always family first, you know. My dad always used to say that classic phrase from the, what movie was The Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all.
Awesome.
He'd say that all the time, just random. And it just in little situations, whenever we're having disagreements with our siblings and stuff. And that was always just ingrained in us. It was just how it was. So I never really had to make a choice. And I think that was due to kind of my parents and how they'd raised us to be.
It's amazing. I think what you said right there, now you're going to get me emotional, Ben, but you said you weren't a good ally, which I disagree with. I think you're a great ally, but just your primary function was to be a good brother. I think that's the whole point of this conversation. And I think that the gift that you give so many other people just by that example is immeasurable, because that's the goal, isn't it? For an unconditional family, it should be just exactly that. We should be treating each other as loving and as kind as we can. So I appreciate that. Jacob, if you don't mind, again, for the room that hasn't heard a lot of your story, tell us a little bit about what it was for that next period of time when you came out, or given the circumstances, and specifically, and I don't mean to lead you too much, but what were sort of some of the reactions, and then what were the decisions you needed to make as a result of some of those reactions to people around you, your community, any other family, or whatever else? So what was your kind of next process?
You mean sort of after the coming out?
Or tell us the coming out story. I mean, the actual, like, to the world. You came out to your family and they were instantly supportive. What were did you have other reactions? It sounds like you had some really positive experiences there. I think importantly, because they gave you this sort of armor already, what were some of the other things that you encountered as you were coming out in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting because where I stand now and how I was experiencing then, it's two different worlds. And for everyone who is, you know, who has come out of the closet or been LGBTQ, it's, when you look back on it, I think, you know, there's some realizations. And I think even after I came out of the closet, you still struggle with internalized hatred of who you are. And actually, you never stop coming out of the closet. You do it every day. and it doesn't, sometimes it's still really scary. You know, it depends. There are spaces where you feel more comfortable, people you feel more comfortable. And then there are spaces that feel more risky.
Jacob, that's remarkable. You're with politicians and notable celebrities and musicians and athletes all the time, and that still is a scare to you. Can you talk to that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think something that I've been, you know, working on personally is going back to 12-year-old Jacob. And just letting him know that he's okay. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and I think that it's too personal, but I think that it's been a remarkable experience for me because you talk about the notable celebrities and the athletes and things, and all I think about is I just want to bring my full self to every room. And I think that that's real authenticity and that's real bravery, is having the courage to do that. And one thing that comes to mind for me is I had just kind of started to grapple with coming out, and I started working with Encircle, and Stephanie, the founder, said, let's go down to the Provo Pride Festival and do a little booth, to tell people about Encircle. I don't even know that the house existed or was open. I can't even tell you, but it was very early on. And I was nervous. It was going to be really my first Pride Festival in some ways, where I was showing up as my full self. But I was kind of coming with my Encircle t-shirt armor, and our mandate was to, love everybody just as they are. So we got like basically a glorified easy bake oven and wanted to like bake chocolate chip cookies in the moment and like hand them out to people. And then we had a little photo booth moment, and I was real nervous. And at this time, Ben had just moved in with me. We were living together in Orem, and Ben was working like a million jobs. I tell you what, he works a lot harder than I do. He was like doing electrical work in the middle of the night in the dead of winter. I mean, it sounds like my personal hell. And I woke up early to go to this booth, and I had talked to Ben about how nervous I was. And I was scared to show up as my full self. And I was probably only been there about 20 minutes, and in comes from around the corner Ben Dunford. And he comes up to the booth, and I was like, you were working, you're so tired, why are you here? And he said, well, I wouldn't miss an opportunity to let you know that I'm in your corner. And we took a little picture, and I still have it. And I think about it all the time, because I think we can't miss opportunities to let people know that we're in their corner. We have to go out of our way and go, hey, I care about you. And that was a powerful lesson that Ben Dunford taught me in terms of my coming out. So I hope that kind of answers, Paul.
That's amazing. Sorry, we're having the dog is very excited about some neighbors with their dogs. So if you get an errant schnauzer for comic relief. Ben, I think for some people, it might be scary. You mentioned your friends came up to high school, or you had to go and leave maybe I don't mind saying that Ben's like this really cool firefighter now, and it's like, big tough guy and all the things that are maybe a part of like kind of cisgendered Caucasian male straight culture. There's some scariness probably, I suppose, for some people to go all in on that. How would you address people that say that it's a little bit frightening to say the non-traditional empathy that, kind of culturally we're raised with, kind of some of the worst things you can be in pop culture is, even though it's trending in Instagram or whatever, but the gay thing is still really hard for a lot of, especially kind of that masculine kind of dude culture. How does that fear? How would you tell someone that's afraid of that? What would you say to them?
That's an excellent question. I think for me, because you're right. I mean, it totally is scary to try to, especially when you're somebody who is in maybe a very conservative culture or whatever it may be, that that like the people around you aren't going to, they could make fun of you, or they're going to think less of you if you actively or vocally say that you're an ally, right? But I think the thing to remember is, if you're scared to be an ally, imagine how scared that person is to be gay or LGBTQ. Like, put yourself in their shoes. You got it easy. Like, if you care about that person, like, take a risk. Like, it's what you have. The fear that you have is very minimal compared to theirs, and also to the people around you that might judge you. You just have to remember that anybody who judges you for loving people, they're obviously in the wrong. So blow it off. That's kind of my perspective on that.
Sounds like a super sensitive tough guy. That's amazing. That's really amazing, Ben. I think for one of the goals that we have with working with some of the peculiar curriculum that George and some others and I are working on is to create culturally specific language and lessons, and the ability to talk in a faith-based way that, whether you're of the LDS faith, or if you're identify as born again or evangelical or Jewish or Catholic or whatever, what would there be? Would there be any lessons that you have learned in your time as a member of the LDS community? Is there any parable that spoke to you, or any religious teaching, and this is to both of you, that would have, because I think, I'll interrupt myself, excuse me. I think where a lot of LGBTQ community issues lie in believing that they can't have both with the faith and with the faith that they were raised with, and that there is this black and white divide and a schism, and we're certainly told by a lot of clergy members of many religions that it's my way or the highway or whatever. I mean, there's not a lot of flexibility. I have found the opposite, actually, in some of my belief system, in terms of certain lessons or places where I've learned empathy or kindness or soul-searching kind of testimonial experiences. Would you, either of you, be willing to share something that you have taken with your faith, from your faith, that you still apply in, Jacob, in your case, and Ben, in your case?
I think Jacob could speak to that a little bit better than I can. I need to think about it for a second. Let's see if he's got anything.
Okay.
I think there's so much polarization in us versus them that goes on between communities of faith and the LGBTQ community. And I'm a firm believer in two principles. One is in Circle's slogan, no sides, only love. And I get to take credit that I made that. But I feel very passionately about, regardless of political identity, religious identity, sexual or gender identity, there's a place for you at our dinner table. And I also believe in traditional values like kindness and treating people the way you want to be treated, and Christ-like love. And actually, more times than not, in my experience, the biggest hurdle between bridging these two worlds is that we make assumptions about each other. And I've caught myself many times making large brushstroke kind of ideas about my own community and the community I came from. And I just allow myself to be not just I'm not gay, Jacob. I'm just Jacob. And there's actually some fluidity in that. And there's an identity that can be discovered in that. And it's allowed to evolve. And I should give my friends and family the same chance to have more nuance to their identity and to evolve and to be fluid. To say it more simply, I was in circle and this young kid said, I hate Mormons. And I said, you do? He goes, yeah. This kid was 16 and had just been kicked out of their house for being LGBTQ. And he, had grown up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I normally just let kids experience their pain. In this one time though, I went up to him and I was like, do you really hate Mormons? Or did your parents just hurt you? And he's like, no, I'm pretty sure I hate Mormons. And then I look over and I said, do you like Shelly? And Shelly comes every day and makes chocolate chip cookies. And he's like, yeah, I'm obsessed with Shelly. And I said, Shelly's a Mormon. And I saw his little head kind of go, huh? And I said, to myself after leaving that experience, I don't want to be labeled. And neither does anybody else. And I think that we just want the freedom to be ourselves and to have our own belief structure. And for just a case by case, I haven't met one LGBTQ kid that has come out the same as the other. It is so much different. And it's a whole different journey. And there's room for that. And I haven't met a parent who has done their journey the same as the other. It's just different. And everyone deserves the grace to discover that for themselves. And my only mandate is to show up and love the way that I want to be loved.
That's awesome, Jacob. That's one of my blind spots for sure, is to not love back when I'm expecting that same love and accept that same tolerance. I appreciate that example. Ben, do you have anything specific from your kind of faith tradition that you brought with you in this kind of new journey?
I think one of the things that Mormonism for me taught really well was to be a good person. Even though it has its mandatories this and mandatories that, and it's, it has some areas that can be hard and frustrating. I mean, I was LDS for 17 years and I grew up in it, and I think it taught me a lot about being a good person. And I think that people come to they come to a crossroads when their belief in being a good person and everything that they've ever been comes up against doctrine, if you will, or something that tells them otherwise, that they can't feel that way anymore. And for me, and the way that I always perceived Jesus growing up, from the stories and the movies that my dad would make us watch on Sundays, you see it time and time again. One of the main things that they always capture when it comes to Jesus and his stories is him picking up the people at the bottom, the people, you know what I'm saying? Every time, every single time. And I don't remember them all perfectly. It's been years and years since I've studied that stuff or seen those movies, but I know many people here have seen exactly what I'm talking about. He comes in and there is somebody that is being hurt by the people around them, by the average everyday person. They're being hurt by them. They're being judged by them, whatever it may be. And he's there for that person because they need him the most, you know? And I think that becomes difficult in some organized religion when there are some things that go against your ability to give that Christ-like love to somebody because of some rules or some doctrine that was put in place because of that. And that, I mean, it's just a really difficult situation.
Well, and Ben, I appreciate what you just said, because I think with my belief, it's that Christ is there for both that person who's being hurt and for the abuser. And that's where I think what Jacob was just talking about, where we're trying to make this empathy happen around really difficult circumstances where we are going against, by even saying, don't kick out your kid, or, you know, don't be embarrassed. I know a lot of families have a lot of shame around their children being members of the LGBTQ community or their siblings. And I think that it's a hard thing. And so I think we've got to keep that empathy that both of you are speaking to, and that I really love, Jacob, the idea of no labels. I'm looking at our time, and Mom and Dad Dunford, who I have also become good, big fans of rather quickly. Once you meet a Dunford, you're just kind of like obsessed, and that's just the way it is. And I might just give the two of you an opportunity to answer a brief question before we open it up to the rest of the group for questions for Ben and for Jacob. But what maybe possibly, and again, as our goal at Peculiar is to create unconditional families, what was your process, just I know I don't want to truncate it too much, but if you wanted to share your thoughts, what was the process when you realized who Jacob is and what his star was really about and what his light was really about? What was that? Can you give us your initial thoughts, or kind of what you did as a result? Obviously, they went really well from Jacob's perspective, but that couldn't have been hard for you based on, or it couldn't have been easy for you based on what I know about your culture.
Well, I think, to be fair, it went messy, didn't it, Jacob? It was messy. There were messy moments. I think parenting is messy and hard, and none of us do it perfectly. So, and in terms of knowing who Jacob was, honestly, I think I'm still discovering that every day. I am still learning who Jacob is, what he's capable of, the kind of person that he is. I think that I had a moment at Love Loud in 2018 when we stood at the top of Rice Eccles Stadium at the end of the day. And Jacob's Aunt Penny was there. She's in here too. But I think that was a moment for me that I understood that Jacob was where he was meant to be. I looked out at all those people, and Jacob stood up there at the top with Imagine Dragons had come out onto the stage, and so Jacob was finally able to get off the stage after being on there all day. And he came up and found his dad and I, and he put his arms around us, and he thanked us for helping him to make this possible for all of these people. And I think that's when I knew that was kind of a full circle moment for me, from Jake's coming out to that time, that I realized, when Ben talks about like his discomfort and some of the hard things, I think then I knew that that's where Jacob belonged. That's where he's doing what he was meant to be doing. And I've been really at peace with that and who he is and his role ever since then.
I think something you just said, I'm having a hard time getting through this without sobbing, but parenting is messy. and acknowledging that it's still worth the effort. It's still worth going into those difficult conversations and those messy circumstances. I think sometimes we're raised to believe that it needs to go perfectly. And I grew up washing the car every Saturday night so that Sunday it looked amazing in the church parking lot. And there was, that's a fact. There tends to be this, and I don't think it's unique to Mormonism, but I think it's prevalent in a lot of church cultures, is that it can't be messy, or we've done something wrong, or that there is there's a penalty for not showing up with a white shirt, or don't have the right answer in a lesson or to a family home evening. And I think I love the word messy. I think that's really great. Jacob and Ben, if you're okay with it, we've got about 15 minutes, and I'd love to get any questions from the rest of the audience. We've got a few people on that have joined midway, and then there's a few that have had to drop off. And I'm sure as we're recording, we'll get some other questions through Facebook and Instagram. But does anyone have a question for Jacob or for Ben or for Mom and Dad Dunford? Any comments?
I have one.
Hi, Susie.
Can you hear me? Should I come on here?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it's a comment or just being grateful. I mean, I know Jacob and I met like early on when the first Encircle was being done. And it's been an interesting journey for me, becoming an ally and not having a LGBTQ plus child. And when I think I don't know who said it, but someone said, if you can imagine how stressful it is for you to get out there and publicly be an ally, imagine how stressful it is for the person. And it's so interesting to me how true that is, and how you have to at times feel like you have to give up some relationships and some things of people that aren't going to understand in order to stand in those places. But I was really grateful for that comment, because it's so true. And I've had to do some kind of out there things as an ally and just take my chances on the people around me, whether they're going to accept me or not. But I've had a good friend, really, really good friend that's gay, that said that exact same thing to me. She's like, so are you not going to put it out there because you're afraid? Well, what do you think I've been for 30 years? You know? And so anyways, I was just grateful to hear that in another perspective, because I think allies need to realize that it's a step worth taking. And most every time you're just going to come out on top and influencing others to step into that space too, if they can truly understand what it feels like, for like you did, Jacob. So that was all I wanted to say.
That's amazing. That's great. I think frequently we are put in that position where it is fear-based, and whether you're coming out or you're coming out as an ally, or you're letting your ward know or your family know. Certainly it was very, very frightening for me, and for most people. I think, again, to Susie's point, it's going to be that around this topic until it isn't. We recently, I think, celebrated Loving Day, in which it was the Supreme Court that allowed marriage between different races in the United States. And I think about what it would have been generations or 2 generations ago to say, oh, I'm interested in someone that doesn't look just like me or has a different ethnic background. And now we don't even think about it. Hopefully that's not even an issue, regardless of the type of marriage. But traditional marriage has come to evolve in that. And I think the scare factor of people that maybe weren't comfortable with that prevented maybe people from living their authenticity in a totally different world. Hopefully we get past that with being an ally to a queer person or to a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I appreciate that a lot, Susie. Are there any other questions? I'm sure that we could go all night, but want to make sure that we're sensitive to the time frame. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
I have a comment, if I may, Paul.
Hi,
Just
Ben.
wanted to thank everybody for being a part of this and for the invitation, Jacob. Thank you, Ben, for your example. Thank you, Jacob, for yours. Mitch and Cathy, thank you for your examples. You guys are great parents. I admire you for being pioneers. And I wanted to express my gratitude for all of you for being Christ-like.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I'm glad you could come.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Uncle Ben.
George, do you have any other last thoughts or?
Yeah, sure.
Dad, you want to say something? Were you about to say something?
I
Oh,
think Dad should be first.
Yes.
Dad. Am I everybody's dad on the call?
Yeah.
You are
Mitch
today.
Dunford, you gonna say something? I saw you get off mute. And I'm not afraid to interrupt George. You know?
Shouldn't be.
A couple of things. So for all of the older LGBTQ people on this call, Cathy and I can't express to you all the deep gratitude that we have for each one of you for paving the way for our son. Paul, guys like you took bullets for many years so that our son Jacob could have as normal life as possible in our culture. And Cathy and I love each one of you deeply for that. I also have family. We have family on this call. You heard from my brother Benjamin. My brother Adam is on this call. They're both members of Mormon stake presidencies currently. And they have the courage to step outside the lines and be on this call. That's profound. My sister, Wendy, is on this call. She's in a women's presidency in her stake. We're making a difference. We're having an impact. And it's just an honor. One of the greatest blessings of my life was the gift of having a gay son. It taught me that there's so much value in looking at the world differently and questioning my own core beliefs. And that I count as one of the greatest gifts and blessings of our life.
True.
You guys are making it hard to get through the rest of this. Wow. Thank you for that. I think that's what every kid wants to hear from their parent or for their family or from their sibling. That's exactly what everyone wants to hear. Thank you for that. To the room and to everyone that's joined, thank you for being a part of this today. I had not anticipated being touched as much as I was tonight. I'm always impressed with Jacob, and Ben always makes me laugh, and they're two of the coolest kids I know. But I really appreciate the insights that you've brought. For those who have not attended any Allies and Appetizers in the past, this is again what we want to be doing roughly the third or fourth week of every single month for Peculiar. The theme this month for July was how to be an ally as a sibling. And if we haven't heard that, I don't know where we would hear anything like that after this conversation. So Ben, thank you in particular. Our theme for August is kind of girding the loins or making sure that your kid is ready to go back to school, and some of the bullying that's still happening and the prejudice that's still happening. We'll have another outreach on the Peculiar Facebook, and our curriculum is going to start involving a lesson plan that everyone will be able to have and do some reading beforehand. So hold us to that. We're excited to be able to bring everyone who's interested this same level of quality conversations, and this will be a hard one to beat. So thank you to the Dunford family en masse. And as I scroll, I hadn't been looking at everyone on here, but there's some Dunfords. Yeah, that's great. This is a good turnout, so I appreciate that. I know we had some trouble with connection, so we'll probably get this recording out to everybody else. George, do you have any last statements for anything?
No, I'll keep it brief. I suffer from the same problem Jacob has. I can speak incessantly. But I can't thank you enough, Jacob, and especially Ben, as we've been focusing on sibling support and love and allyship. And of course to Mitch and Cathy, thank you. One of the most important things that we ever learn in this life is modeling of behavior. And I think as much as Mitch, you've honored, Paul and all those that are on this call that have taken bullets in advance, you guys are doing the same thing. And I think that, I honor you and appreciate, the example that you're setting. All of your children need to know that you're going to love them however they, come to. So we love this, grateful for your time, and thank you for just opening up this conversation. It's so important. So thank you.
I'm just gonna add on. I just want to thank all of my friends. I see a lot of friends here. See a lot of familiar faces from my work within Circle, and then some new faces. And I'm grateful that you all took the time out of your night to come and listen to our story. But I especially want to thank my family for showing up and for listening to the conversations. And I think it's so profound. I owe pretty much everything I've done to my Dunford family. And that means everybody. And everyone's played a big part. And I want to add to, I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, but there's a quote that I really like. That it's not the great and huge, love loud sort of acts that keep the darkness at bay, but it's the everyday deeds, by everyday people that really keeps the light in the world. I really believe that with my whole heart. I just appreciate that everyone does their part every day to build space for people who are feeling outside. I think it makes a big difference, and we all show up in different ways. So thank you.
Wow, thanks, Jacob. Well, again, thanks everyone for attending. Look forward to seeing you, and we'll be passing this recording on to anyone that's interested. So reach out via Facebook, or if you have my text or DMs, let me know. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, George.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.